Welcome to the big story. On the other end is Jotham Taremwa, the spokesperson of the Electoral Commission. Let's see if we can try and link to him. Jotham, good morning.
Good morning, Joel.
Yes, it's a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. Let's begin this way. Of course, we've not had an interview with you, so some of the questions might look regurgitated, but it's the first time that we really get to speak to the Electoral Commission over a couple of things. Look, Jotham, after the elections, or even on that particular day, we began to hear many a sentiment, but especially after, as observer reports kept coming in. The EU observers, for example, said the Electoral Commission lacked transparency and independence. The United States Embassy came out and, of course, talked about excessive police force, blockage of social media, and reports of pre-ticked ballot papers and vote buying undermine the integrity of the democratic process. Local observers, Sion Uganda, did come out to say that this election did not meet the minimum required standards. So, when local observers and international observers punch holes in an electoral process that was organized by the Electoral Commission, which you speak for, is this not an indictment on you people?
Why have you dwelt on the EU Observer report?
Well, there was the EU Observer report, the United States Embassy
Observation Mission report, there was IGAD, there was ASA. They all agreed and appreciated our preparations and our management of the electoral process. I am surprised that since elections ended, you have all dwelt on the EU Observer report.
That's not entirely true. You talk about IGAD and so on. Each of them, of course, there are those that said, yeah, the election by and large, you know, but each one of them, we saw Olusegun Obasanjo, we did see Ali Hassan Mwinyi, former Tanzanian president, we saw Rupia Banda, former Zambia president, each of them heading different observer missions, even though in totality they said, you know, yes, the election went on quite okay. Each of them mentioned there were issues, there were irregularities that need to be handled going forward. So each of them pointed out critical issues.
But General Obasanjo came in a day before the elections.
They had teams here before.
To pick from the electoral process. He came in at the tail end of the process, and I don't think his judgment really was conclusive.
But they had teams here, you know, weeks before. Him as the head, he did not have to be here.
Joel, I was part of the accreditation team. I know when these teams were around.
Okay, so tell me, Jotham, do you say that what these observer reports...
With the exception of the European Union Observer Mission, who came in a little bit earlier and engaged us almost on every day basis, and we explained. So it was a big surprise to see that they came up with that report, and instead of sharing it with the Electoral Commission, they went ahead and shared it with the media, and we became like the third-party recipient of that report.
Okay, I just need to let our viewers know, because when they see me keep quiet and you on the other end, there's a small few-second lag of the audio, so just for our viewers to know. Here's the thing, Jotham. So do you say that these issues that were raised by all these observers, local and foreign, they don't hold any water at all? According to you, the election was 100%, every T was crossed, every I was dotted.
Well, I don't want to say that everything was 100% okay, but I don't think they were as bad as they are portraying in their reports, especially the European Union. You know, these are functions. You can't get 100%, but if you get 80%, 90%, that is good enough.
So you think you got 80% or 90% as the Electoral Commission?
I leave that to Ugandans to make a judgment, but not to the European Union Observation Mission to make a judgment on behalf of Ugandans.
Okay, talking about Ugandans, since you want to go by their thoughts, I don't know if you are on social media, but many are Ugandan. And look, I must make it clear that it's not representative of necessarily every Ugandan, but many a person that you meet, you go to social media and so on, everybody is raising an eyebrow. Those are Ugandans. By raising an eyebrow, really, I mean...
How many Ugandans are on social media compared to those who are not on social media?
Well, I mean, social media and even those that you meet, those that write in the papers and so on. And again, like I'm saying, it is not necessarily representative of everybody.
No, Joel, let's discuss from a point of fact. How many Ugandans are on social media versus Ugandans who don't have access to social media.
So those 3 million plus that are on social media, do you not think their concerns hold water at all?
Now we had 15 million voters. If you are talking of 3 million, that is 12 million out there.
Okay, let's now begin to break down the happenings as they did. I know that as the EC, you came out on polling day and said that the reason why, you know, these polling materials delayed to get to places, especially in Kampala and Wakiso, was because of the issue, the question of transport. And to date, we still do not get what you meant by that explanation of transport. It's nebulous, it's not clear. What exactly happened on polling day 18th, especially for Kampala and Wakiso?
I think we have explained that one a million times, and
well,
I don't think really
there's no harm in
keep repeating it. If you don't know that transport can disappoint you, if you don't know that there can be operational challenges, if you think EC works out of this world,
so help us understand.
Really,
because you see, when you just leave it generically like that, that's why people will even unfairly criticize you. So it's important you come out clear. When you say there were transport issues, what exactly do you mean? Did cars break down? Did you hire less cars than you needed? And so on. Because Kabale and all these other places, Guru, they received their materials earlier. So if there was an issue for Kampala, which is really under the nose, if you like, of the Electoral Commission, we don't get it. What exactly do you mean?
Joel, on that very day when we had the problem with the late delivery in Kampala and Wakiso, I was on NTV. I explained the challenges. One, I told you our plan was start with the farthest districts and end with Kampala and Wakiso. By the time we got done with the farthest districts, we were running late on Kampala. Now you again have issues of transport. We don't have all those vehicles to transport election materials. You contract other service providers. You will tell somebody arrive here at 8, he will arrive at 9, he will arrive at 10. All those are operational challenges we go through on a daily basis, me and you. Okay?
I'm sorry for pushing this too much, Jotham, but
Electoral Commission is not expected to have such challenges.
Well,
let's be fair, Joel. There was nothing sinister about that. The Commission came out and offered an apology. We extended the voting time for the people of Kampala and Wakiso. We postponed polling in some stations where there was violence and conducted fresh elections in a peaceful environment. So that was a settled matter. And the good thing is that Kampalans and Wakiso people really appreciated and understood that those were challenges, and we made good of those challenges.
I'm afraid it might not be settled in the minds of every Kampalan and Wakiso dweller. But look, of course, there's two folds to this. That it could be sinister. You say it was not. Some people might not believe so. I'll choose to believe it was not sinister. My question really is to do with the planning. In 2011, because, you know, I was around, moved around quite a bit and so on, there were issues in a few places. The delays were, of course, not up to 2 p.m. like it was in some cases, you know, but 9 a.m., 10 a.m. or thereabout. And so we thought, having gone through that in 2011, we probably should have learned better and planned better. So like you say, maybe there was no sinister motive, but it's like that we probably didn't learn from 2011. We did not plan well enough this time round.
Do you plan for accidents, Joel?
So was this an accident? Because you knew there was an election 5 years from 2011.
It was an accident. you have a journey tomorrow, you take your car for a service, you fuel it, you change tires, you get on the road and you get an accident. Good enough, people didn't die in that accident and the vehicle was not damaged. The situation. Okay, so nobody prepares for an accident. An accident can happen any time. In your very car you have driven for over 10 years. So,
okay. Look, Jotham, on that day, because I was accredited, I did move around a bit, and some polling stations I could go to. There's one particular one I went to, and I found this presiding officer who had bounced a lady. This lady had a national ID. Her name was on the voters register. But the verification kit, the biometric verification tick, could not detect her thumbprint. And so they said, you cannot vote. And I took issue with that. I said, wait a minute, the buck should stop with the voters register. Do you not know? I actually tried to call you, but understandably you were busy. Eventually I got to your deputy, Paul Bukenya, who then spoke to the presiding officer, and they eventually let the, this person vote. And there were a couple of issues, a few of these other places. And again, getting back to the issue of planning and preparedness, these presiding officers, many people took issue with them and thought, wait a minute, did we get them the day before and then get to train them? Maybe the training was not sufficient enough?
Joel, our training for our election officials is like a teacher and a student. You go to class, you teach students, you give them exams, some get 100%, some get 80, some get 50, some get 40. Unfortunately for us, we never have time to conduct those exams to know who is going to be perform on that day.
You had 5
so
years
if there was a problem with some of the presiding officers, it was not as a result of insufficient voter education. It goes down to an individual on how he or she understands after you have trained that person. So if there was that problem at your station, then it was an individual problem, surely. But I'm glad that in the rest of the country, majority of the people we trained did well.
Jotham, we, for example, know that there's going to be an election in 2021. And the challenge normally is we wait for last minute to begin to do things, preparation, voter education, and so on. Because even on polling day, the few polling stations I moved to, after voting, I moved to 10 polling stations, and you could still find people asking, so how do we get about this? How do we do this? And that kind of thing. Could it be that maybe your message didn't get out as well as you wanted it to? Or could it be that it got out late? Because it was not long before the election that we began to see a plethora of messages on TV, on radio, you people taking interviews, clearly trying to do your job. But question again is, we seem to wake up too late to begin to do things. I know you come from Western Uganda. There is a saying there, meaning you've gone to bed, say, at 9 p.m., and you're planning to wake up at 6 a.m., but then you wake up at 5 a.m., you discover you've not covered yourself. Then you remember to cover yourself at 5 a.m. Mind you, you're meant to wake up at 6 a.m. And the feeling is that the Electoral Commission tends to do things this way. Is it lack of funding that does not come in adequately and on time? What happens along the way?
Maybe, Joel, even the voters, we have been doing this voter education all along, and probably not so many are paying attention, and they are doing it at the last minute. So I think you can't put that one to Electoral Commission. We did our best, like you mentioned. There were SMS messages telling people their polling stations. There were numbers you could call and you were told your polling station. We put our register on the website, and we said you can go there and check your polling station. So I don't know what we could have done, and we never did. But sometimes some people may not get attentive to the messages, and that's why slips. And we told them where to find those slips, which clearly told you where you are going to vote from. But some didn't bother. So really, if there is an activity, the voters really need to take interest in the whole electoral process. Voting is one of those electoral processes, but electoral processes are many, and let us participate from the start up to the end.
All right, talking about from the start to the end, of course, there's still elections that are ongoing, but there are still questions that have been raised by either candidates or rival camps, and in many ways trying to punch holes in the work of especially the district returning officers. There were issues in Gulu, this one gets announced, then there are issues, and a couple of others. To date, I'm sure you have probably gotten a few petitions, some have gone to court. But when you get to hear all these questions that are being raised, of course, some will say, well, losers will always complain at the end of the day. But then again, others will say, wait a minute, did the EC not see this? Eventually, some ballot boxes come, when they have been opened at the district tally center, and then the presiding officer eventually goes ahead. When he's confronted a little bit, then he backtracks, and, there were all these issues, and many people kept wondering, wait a minute, maybe not poor planning again, but again, perception is very important, and some kept thinking, maybe the EC, and probably not you at headquarters, but your people on the ground who are tethered to you, they seemed to have a different agenda altogether. And that's a very unfortunate perception out there, Joseph.
It is unfortunate, but a perception is the most cheapest commodity.
Just some perceptions are everything at times. You cannot run away from them.
Well, you are dark, and somebody will see you and say, Joel, you are light. It is a perception. It is somebody's opinion.
No, that's a fallacy.
What is important for us as a commission,
you know what I mean, I'm light and yet I'm not. But you see, perception much of the time is tethered to what people see, what they hear, and they're important, aren't they?
Yeah, but Joel, what do? We engage the people, we have engaged the parties in the National Consultative Forum, we have explained ourselves, we have brought everybody on board. We launched the roadmap in 2013. Before anybody could even read that roadmap, he said elections have already been rigged. So it is something you work on over time, Joel. It is not a one-day thing that you can just erase it. There are people who will cheat and come and say they were cheated, they got caught and they lose. Okay? What is important, Joel, I think, is that in this country you have laws. If you are not happy with the process, you have the right to petition, and then courts will help. But what we do as a commission is to make sure that what you are doing is within the law, okay? And you are serving everybody without any bias. And if somebody has bias on you, that one you can't help it. For you, you will keep doing your work, Joel. There are people who will say Joel is a good moderator. There are those who will say Joel is not a good moderator. What are you going to do about those people?
Well, to listen to all of them, because even those that say Joel is a bad moderator,
we live in every day. But what is important is Joel to do his job to the best of his ability and to the standards required of his station, but not to appease those who think he's not doing a good job.
On 20th of February, when now we did get to begin, actually even before 20th, because you see as the build-up kept, you know, getting on, we kept seeing provisional results announced at the National Tally Center, Nambole, by the EC chairperson, Dr. Chigundu. And there were concerns of, wait a minute, he keeps giving us results. We would want to know where are they coming from, want to see from each polling station, from each district, etc., etc. Of course, you of the EC said it was not necessary, it was time wasting. But now the voters on this other end kept thinking it is important. We need to see and track which are coming from where. Because if at my polling station, it was announced that candidate A is the one that won, and I want to be able to track that and see at the National Tally Center that the same thing is playing out. We did not see that, and people kept thinking, which again was a very unfortunate perception, which you cannot run away from, because if they cannot see the correlation, they kept thinking, wait a minute, maybe they are tweaking the results along the way. Why was that not done? It looked like, you know, a very important thing to do, that you keep showing this is coming from this, from the other, and this is how we tally the eventuality.
Joel, I think that that complaint and perception is arising out of, I think the word ignorance is not a good word to use, but maybe lack of knowledge on the electoral process. Okay? If anybody really wanted to know the process of tallying, the tallying was done at our districts, our district offices. Candidates sent people, we are accredited to be at the district head, district offices of Electoral Commission. That tallying was being done. In Nambore, we were receiving information on the tally sheets. Okay, so I do not expect anybody to find tallying in Nambore. We were reading what was coming from the districts.
Do you not think it was important? Because you see, at the end of the day, it gets back to the question of perception. Because if people cannot connect the dots, it becomes a challenge. Because you see, we cannot say this is how it is to the later. You want to do away with those perceptions at the end of the day, do you not?
Joel, we are now going to be part of the problem again.
I'm asking valid questions which Ugandans out
for you are continuing you are, no, Joel, listen, now this is election business. You can challenge me with the vision business, okay? Election business, let me challenge you and educate you. If you want to see how the process is done, you go to the polling station, let them count votes when you are there, let them record the scores when you are there. If you want to see how tallying is done, you go to the district and see how tallying is done at the National Center. We are the receiving end. Okay? And that is what is provided within the law. We are not going to change the law unless Parliament changes it.
Okay, talking about the law, okay, in a very short while I should be joined by a lawyer to just, you know, throw their weight on a couple of things. But look, are you saying the law bars you from, at the National Tally Center, saying these are the results that you could even put it on a screen. You don't even have to read it because time might not allow. But you have a screen and indicate these are the results coming in from each district, from each polling station, and you keep relaying that. Are you saying, Jotham, that the law, you will be arrested in case you did that? You would be arrested?
So, does your show have a time limit? Can you conduct it up to midday? Don't you have other programs?
Of course not, and that is why I'm saying this could be done concurrently.
What
you have the screen there, the results scrolling.
Joel, listen, I need you to understand the electoral process better so that you can communicate it better. In Nambore, we installed screens, okay? For observers, for the media, and for the candidates' agents. Whatever was coming from the district tally centers would be transmitted live and be received on all the screens. So the agents of candidates, the election observers, the electoral commission staff had different terminals receiving the same information. Now, one of the screens we provided was, if you wanted to know how a certain polling station performed, you were able to scroll and get to that polling station and see the scores. Okay? That is the best we could do to ensure that everybody knows what is coming from the district tally centers. Remember, at the district tally centers, candidates had their agents with the declaration of results forms. Okay? So they were able to verify tallying at that point at the district because the agents are there. They have those forms where the tally clerks are picking the details, okay? And here at Nambore, there are agents. So you have candidates agents at the polling station. You have candidates agents at the district tally center. You have candidates agents at the national tally center. Each is feeding the other, and each is verifying and following the process.
Let me just bring in somebody that's joined me here,
other than that,
Joel. Cut you short there. I'm joined by Robert Kironda, who is a lawyer. We found we had discussed a couple of things with Jotham Tarema, the spokesperson of the EC. We were pettifogging over the question of, you know, the EC at the National Tally Center showing everybody where results are coming from the district, etc., etc. But tethered to that as well, what concerned you the most about this election in general terms?
Well, first of all, good morning.
Good morning.
Many things concern me, but I am not a politician. I am only a Ugandan and perhaps an observer of the process. And the question you were discussing about tallying, I can only comment on what the law says. Mr. Taremo has explained how they did it, and that is their right. What the law requires for a presidential election is that you bring all the envelopes before the returning officer. They are opened in the presence of candidates or their agents. And my understanding of the Presidential Elections Act is that that should be done at a national tally center, not at the district. Results go to the district from where they should be transmitted to the Electoral Commission's Central Tally Center. That's the way I understand it. Certainly I believe they understand the section differently, which is perhaps the issue here. And that's why people are saying, where was the tallying done? The simple solution is, I know that yesterday they received a request for access to information. Let them put the tally sheets up on the website. Anyone who has issues with them can raise them, or let them avail them to whoever wants them. And then people can go on and discuss whatever they want with the tally sheets or the DR forms that people are asking for. That will take away all the issues around which numbers were tallied where and so on and so forth. Because in the end, once you have the details, it ceases to matter.
What's your quick response to that, Jotham?
Joel.
Yes, I hear you. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, people who want our tally, our declaration of results forms put on the website, I don't know how that will help them. Okay. Because I thought they had their own declaration of results forms They are going to verify them with the information we have put on our website, and we have sent to all the candidates to cross-check. So if you want to audit me, and then you are asking me for information, I thought you are going to use your information to audit mine.
Yeah, but so what's hard about you
because what I'm going to give you is similar to what I have on the website. So if you want to challenge what I have on the website and what I have provided to the candidate, then you pull out your official declaration of results form which we gave you at the polling station, and you say Electoral Commission. This is what you put on the website. But the official results form you gave me, this is what is reflected there, and is not similar to what you have on the website. So how is my form going to help you if you want to audit my results?
Can I answer that?
Please.
There's a very simple reason why people are saying put up the actual DR forms, because the results I've seen on the EC website are a summary. They are basically a collation of a bunch of results. If you have many polling stations in different districts and you arrive at total per polling station and so on and so forth, the actual DR form at that polling station is the raw data. So all people are saying, and I understand Mr. Terem was concerned, how is that going to help? The simple answer is sunlight is the best disinfectant. If there is nothing to hide, why not avail the information? There were 9 million people who voted. Not everyone had an agent, but surely everyone deserves to know where their vote went.
Absolutely.
So I think that's the simple issue here. If there is nothing to hide, avail the information. Because in the end, every Ugandan has a right to access that information because it ought to be public information.
What's so hard about doing that, Jotham? Because you see, at the end of the day, you want to remove the perceptions we were talking about. You remember we talked about perceptions, and you say people can say what they want. After all, you did what is right. If you did what is right, why not put it out there for public audit?
No, Joel, the point here is Electoral Commission has its original copy of the Declaration of Results form. The other original copy has been provided to the candidate through his agent. The candidate thinks Electoral Commission did not do a good job. He does not agree with the results. The best thing here is to pull out your results and challenge those results provided by Electoral Commission. Because what we have on our Electoral Commission website, and what we provided to the candidates on the soft copy is the scores of every candidate at the polling station. Okay? There is no aggregation here. The aggregation is at the district. So if you want to challenge mine, the results for the polling station are provided on our website and on the soft copies we shared with the candidate.
But we are
so if a candidate who had an agent, why don't you get your copy of the DR form and compare it with what we have put on the website? Why do you want me to post mine? If you are not comfortable with my results, then post yours and we see where who is talking what.
You see, okay? The problem
so really, that is an escapist request, which I don't see by mere application of common sense. I don't see how it is going to be useful to anybody who is challenging Electoral Commission results.
Jotham, the problem here is that
bring a legal argument, a political argument into a factual matter.
Jotham, the problem here is that you good people of the Electoral Commission, imagine
Chirunda,
all of us are agents of candidates.
And I believe you really can understand this one better.
Let's try and listen to each other here, Jotham. I was saying the problem is that you imagine each of us is tethered to a candidate as an agent and that kind of thing. No, as an innocent voter, I would want to see how things did go. It's possible I didn't even vote, by the way, but as a Ugandan, I would want to know how did the process in my country go. So, I don't have declaration forms because I was not an agent of any candidate, but I voted in this process. I may not even have voted, but as a Ugandan or as a member of the international community, what's wrong with finding out if things were done well in this country? We are going to have our elections in our country. So,
Joel, we are not going to act outside the law because we were Ugandan. The law talks of an agent who receives an official copy of the Declaration of Results form.
So does
if you want information on the electoral process, you can get it, but not a DR form because you are not an agent of any candidate, my brother.
All right, you were talking about the law. Is it illegal for us to get to find out this information that only agents are supposed to know it and candidates?
To the best of my knowledge, and Mr. Tarema may correct me because I'm sure he's familiar with the law, Ugandans have a constitutional right to access public information or information in public offices. if we are going to debate the integrity of the EC, the best way to do that is to use the information they have. That is one of the easiest ways to acquit the EC from these allegations of having messed up the election. Any Ugandan out there has a constitutional right to access that information. That is the law. Now, whether or not a candidate wants to challenge the election, I will leave that for the courts, and I am sure people are going to file petitions starting today. They will sort that out. But what happens to the Ugandan out there who is saying, my taxpayers' money is spent on that electoral commission? I want to know if what they're doing is right. Secondly, what happens in a situation where, such as with the FDC, offices are raided and declaration of results forms are taken by the police and there's nothing else to verify? Mr. Teremo advises us to publish our own DR forms. I am a Ugandan, I am a voter, I don't carry DR forms. I don't want to participate in politics. I just want to know, is the EC spending my money well? For me to do a rigorous analysis of the EC's job, I need that information. For me to be able to decide, okay, how better do how do I choose which party to belong to? I want to see who performed how. Now, the summaries on the Electoral Commission website, insofar as they go down to that route, don't take away the controversy over what was done where. If you have polling stations with 100% voter turnout, that is okay. What you're saying is that if a polling station has 100% voter turnout and they all voted one candidate, there was no agent at that polling station.
133 of them, is it?
I don't know how many they are. Mr. Teremo knows better. Listen, what you're saying is there was no other agent of any other candidate there. That's fine. Put up the form so we can see there are no signatures. All I'm saying is Ugandans have a right to know. And those Ugandans are not restricted to those who run for public office.
So Jotam, you see that we cannot run away from this question of if you want
but
to redeem your image really as the Electoral Commission, because everybody out there is hounding you, they want to put your heads on the chopping block. There's an easy way out. You get to publish this because there are those other concerns. You know,
some of us are just researchers.
Number of polling stations, 100% attendance, nobody fell sick, nobody boycotted,
nobody died
up, and they voted for one particular candidate and so on. So to remove this whole aura of suspicion, you publish this. Are you saying you're going to be arrested for doing this because you say it is, you know, the law does not allow you to? And you could help us maybe quote which law and etc. etc.
Joel, I agree Ugandans have a right to information, okay? We already provided this information, we never hid it, did we? We did not. If there are stations with 100 voter turn-up, maybe he's a lawyer, he can advise if that is illegal or unacceptable at an election. That I don't know, he's a better placed person to tell us that having 100% turn-up is not acceptable in any election. At least I have not found it in our electoral laws, okay? But I think, Joel, here we don't have to politicize the issue. When I am speaking, I am not speaking as a politician. I am speaking as a spokesperson of the Electoral Commission. I'm presenting the facts as they are, as per the law. Anybody is free to debate those facts in a way he or she wants. But the fact will remain as they are in the law. So I don't think I'm going to have an argument with Chirunda. He may have his opinions, okay, on the process. And I will respect his opinions. But I am communicating to you what is contained within the electoral law, okay? And that is my job really. So I don't want to get into the politics of the good and the bad of the process. If there is any problem with the law, Chirunda and colleagues, you can petition Parliament and it makes changes in some of these laws.
Is the problem actually with the
law? But I'm not
actually
on Joel's show and I started discussing the bad and the good about specifics within the electoral laws. Okay?
All right, let's just get
we
back
have not shielded any information. We have provided information right from polling station level up to the district level, up to the National Tally Center. We have shared this information. Okay? I don't think we have hidden any information. The argument here is you are contesting Electoral Commission results. You had agents as a candidate.
How about me who didn't have an agent? I was just an innocent voter. We retained
our copies. You don't want to pull out your copies. You are instead pushing Electoral Commission to provide its copies. Are you in agreement with us? Are you in disagreement with our results? And if you are in disagreement,
we seem to be misconstruing each other here.
Let's
imagine I am demanding, as Joel Senyonyi,
that do not reflect what we have posted. Are you telling us you never had agents? Then tell us so that we know you never had agents.
You're actually right. I didn't have an agent because I wasn't a candidate, and that goes for so many other Ugandans who simply want to know. We don't have agents. For that matter, we don't have declaration forms, but we want to know how this vote of ours eventually
information
went,
is available, Joel. We have shared it. If you want, you can write, and we will give you that information. Okay?
I think.
All right. Let's bring in Kirunda again.
I think, in all fairness to Mr. Tarema, there's a very easy way to put this issue to an end. I know that yesterday they received, at least I saw in the media that they received a petition
from some women
or some NGOs about these results. I think those ladies may have invoked a certain provision of the law or a process. Perhaps it is best to wait and see how the EC deals with that and what those people will do next, because that will guide us on which laws. Because we're talking about different sets of laws here. So I think the best thing to do is let's leave those who are anxious for this information to go to the EC. When they get it or fail to get it, we'll see what happens next and how it plays out.
You found that, okay, I'm told it was actually Article 41 that was invoked, these ladies.
Which is access to information. Yes, Mr. Taremo.
Yes, come in, Jotham.
It is true. A group of women lawyers, I think FIDA, wrote to the chairman Electoral Commission requesting for those results. I was not coopted in, but I had the opportunity. They passed by to pay Kata Sekor and also to tell me that they had submitted their request. That request will be responded to.
Absolutely. And I agree with you entirely. I think we can then deal with the information issues under Article 41 when the EC responds. It will give us a clearer picture on what we are discussing.
Let's discuss a couple of things, some of which we discussed with Jotham before you did come. Many an observer, local, foreign, they have, in many a way lambasted the Electoral Commission, credibility issues. And Jotham says, look, that is their opinion, they are entitled to it. Do you think they were too hard? Because one particular observer group said this election fell barely short of the minimum standards. Was that not too hard for a democracy like ours? Some will tell you we still have a long way to grow and stuff like that.
I think that the best way to look at the electoral observer reports is objectively. There were, I think it was the EC and the Commonwealth who came out strongly against the election.
EU, you mean?
EU.
Even Sion, the local one.
Even the local ones. But I know that IGAD, for example, said the election passed the test. So to that extent, perhaps Mr. Taremo is right, in the sense that those were their views. The trick here is that when you go back and look at the past reports, some of the issues that came out in the present reports have come out before. The issue for me here is, what do you learn from those reports? Whether they were correct or false, what do you learn from the reports? Do you actually take the trouble to sit down and look through them and say, were they right, were they wrong, or do you just push them aside and say, those were their views, au mwawache? So that's the question. And I think that's really in the hands of the Electoral Commission. They can dismiss the reports, or they can go back and say, do we need to check how we improve on the basis of these reports? Of course, I saw the press conference by President Yoweri Museveni when he said, forget about these observers, we'll tell them what to do, and things like that. And I think he used slightly more stronger language. But for me, the question as a Ugandan is, what will the EC do about those reports? In the past, what the EC has done, to the best of my knowledge, is ignore them. And when they asked, I was in the room when President Obasanjo delivered his remarks, and they asked him how many recommendations of the Commonwealth Observer Report last time were followed. And there was an issue there. The same goes for the EU, the same goes for IGAD. So people in that room were really just saying, are these reports a formality? And I know that there are colleagues of mine at the law school in Makerere who are writing and saying, do you actually need election observers? Because in the end, if they come and recommend 32 action points and only 2 are implemented, does it matter? So, but that for me is a question for the people at the Electoral Commission to decide and to deal with.
Jotham, I know you had not joined the Electoral Commission by 2011, but now you speak for them and you have looked at the workings, their modus operandi. He raises the critical issue of, previously with every election, there are these observation reports, and these observers are given a go-ahead, a green light by you. They have tags with your name, the Electoral Commission, and so on. For all intents and purposes, you accredit them. But when they give you reports, you seem to, throw them under the carpet. You don't ever excogitate over them, see the sense in them, and listen to them. When they speak good of you, like in the case of the IGAD, you say good. When they raise critical issues, like in the case of Sion, EU, and several others, you say that's just their opinion. That's not fair, is it, Jotham?
Joel, we will have an opportunity after these elections to do a self-assessment. We as the Electoral Commission assess ourselves on how we did, how well did we do, or how bad did we do, and we'll find areas of improvement, but also areas of credit for ourselves. Now, with the observer reports, we invite them to come and observe our electoral process. Make notes and also provide recommendations, okay? We'll have an opportunity to study these recommendations and pick out the best practices, and those we think they cannot apply, we will not take them. It is like an advice. If somebody gives you advice on the basis of his knowledge or understanding, that advice you may take it if it works for you. If you think the advice does not work for you, you will not take it. But we will look through these reports and make sense out of them and make use of those good recommendations that can help improve our electoral process and our operational efficiency. Definitely we will make use of these reports.
All right, the other issue that we discussed really was there's so many problems that arose on polling day. This I discussed with Jotham before you did come. Kampala, Wakiso, some will think, they were disenfranchised. Others will say it's, poor planning. Jotham says it was transport issues. Again, that did not critically come through. You see transport, it happens everywhere and so on. Perception, and we cannot run away from this. You're on social media and people will keep saying, look, it is because these areas are strongholds for the opposition and that is where they were, quote unquote, disenfranchised. Again, there are others that will think, wait a minute, maybe it was coincidence. These things do happen. There are delays in this country, and so we probably should not hound the EC as bad as we are.
With regard to Kampala and Wakiso, there are two simple points. One is that I watched on polling day when Mr. Taremwa himself announced the extension of the deadline. And I think he was well within the law. Now, what I expected for me as a lawyer was that automatically extended the close of polling. The extension of the close of polling to the next day is very important because the presidential election results must be declared within 48 hours after the close of polling. So if polling closes on Friday, I assume that the Electoral Commission, my interpretation of the law is that the Electoral Commission has another 24 hours. So they could have announced the presidential election result on the next day by 4 p.m. They chose to announce on Saturday by 4. The result being that about 1,700 polling stations by Engineer Chigundu's announcement were left out of the presidential tally. That's the disenfranchisement, because if people were able to vote the next day and you can tally 26,000 polling stations in 48 hours, I think you can tally 1,700 in 24 hours, depending on which methodology you're using, and I don't speak to the expertise that was used in tallying because I was not there. I don't qualify to discuss that. But that's the issue. There's an issue there. So even if people had voted on Friday, I saw Mr. Taremwa apologize that these were mistakes that were made, and my view is they were avoidable, first of all. The mistakes on Kampala and Wakiso, it is hard to convince a voter in Kampala that you can get ballots to Kotido, you can get ballots to Alebtong, but you can't get ballots to Namuongo. I think the narrative on that, I don't need to go into that. My view is that the mistakes around Kampala and Wakiso were avoidable, and also that the results could have been tallied into the final tally for those 1,700 stations the day after, because then we wouldn't be debating, do 1,700 stations actually affect the election? What is the total population in those areas and things like that? My reading of those results is that when you have 900,000 people, by estimates that we've seen figures flying around, they would affect the election somehow. So if I had been chairman of the EC, which I certainly am not, and perhaps will never be, I would have tallied those results into the presidential tally, because that, I think, would have assuaged some of the concerns around people who voted late. Because people in Kampala are now saying, I went, I stood in the line, I endured the sun, and my vote did not count, or my vote was not counted. So those are the issues. But I think that the lesson from all of this is that this was avoidable.
This was avoidable. Let's get back to Jotham here. He raises that issue of, these results that were not announced. Of course, the chairman says, look, even if they were given to the first runner-up, it would not add too much. But again, the perception thing. So was it an issue of we are trying to beat the deadline of 48 hours, or was it lack of manpower that we could not quickly tally this up and have it as a part of this and do a clean job, if you like?
Joel, I want to agree with Council Chirunda that the unfortunate late delivery for Kampala and Wakiso materials was avoidable. Indeed, it was avoidable. It was unfortunate that there was that delay. It could have been avoided, but now that is after. So we can't dwell on that anymore. But we came out as a commission and owned it up and apologized and made good of it by allowing more time and by extending some stations to the next day to vote. So we made good of that. So any unfortunate incident after that, you realize it could have been avoided. So.
All right. Thanks for that, Ribato Jotham. Let me get back to studio. I've also been joined by Godiva Akulo.
On the 48-hour deadline, okay. Joel.
Please go ahead.
You start counting from the closure of the polls. Okay?
So when the polling closed.
And the closure of the polls on day one was 4 p.m. on the 18th. So 48 hours, those are 2 days, and that takes us up to Saturday. Okay? So there was no contradiction in that. All right. Now, on the results for Kampala, for some stations in Kampala and Wakiso and other areas, the practice areas where there are elections, the problem is that some of our political analysts, they don't take time to research on how some of this work is done elsewhere in other election management bodies. Okay. The practice everywhere where the elections is, if you have 20 polling stations, for example, you receive results from 15 polling stations, and you still have 5 that have not yet submitted their results. Then you see the margin between the leading candidate and the second runner-up, and you assume that all these other 5 stations which have not yet submitted, all the voters have voted for the second run-up, and you assume it is 100% turnout. After that, you realize that the second run-up, what he has scored with the addition of all the votes from those remaining polling stations, cannot challenge the victory of the leading candidate. Then you announce.
All right, well clarified.
Not because it was out of time, out of pressure for 48 hours, because the second run-up could not cut the victory of the leading candidate, even by addition of all the votes in the remaining polling stations.
All right, thanks for clarifying that. We've been joined by Godiva Akulo. She is a lawyer. You were part of those that went to the Electoral Commission to petitions. Yes. What are your concerns? Why did you go to the EC?
So we are a group of women, right? Earlier, Mr. Taremo mentioned that there were some women there from FIDA, but this is not an effort by FIDA. It's an effort by a group of women who are concerned citizens of the Republic of Uganda who are interested in knowing the results from these polling stations where there are some irregularities reported. So we filed access for information requests under Article 41 of the Constitution and Section 5 of the Access to Information Act, which provides that every Ugandan citizen has a right to access any information within the possession of any state organ, right? And it provides for 2 exceptions if maybe the information prejudices the security of the state or the sovereignty of the state, and clearly that doesn't apply in this case. So we met as a group of women, 30 women, and walked to the Electoral Commission yesterday and filed these requests for this information, particularly for these districts where there were certain irregularities reported, like Wakiso, Kampala, and then there was also Gulu, Amuru, Sembabule. We've all been reading the news reports about the irregularities reported in these particular areas. So we are interested in knowing, first of all, what is the information that the Electoral Commission has? Because right now there's so much information going around in the press. They're saying, oh, some polling stations need vote, but their you know, their votes were included in the tally. So where did those voters come from if people did not vote?
Are you asking for this information for your sake as the 30 women, or access for every Ugandan? Say the Electoral Commission puts this on their website and all, because Jotham says as, you know, agents, you have declaration forms, as candidates, you have access to this. So, you know, it does not make sense, at least according to them, for them to put everything, you know, on the website and that kind of thing. So you're trying to get this access for who particularly?
We are asking for this information as citizens of Uganda. Like I said earlier, we are women from different walks of life. Some of us are lawyers, some of us are teachers, some of us work in civil society. We're not working under one particular organization. We're asking for this information as citizens. And we know that the Electoral Commission has already put up some of this information on their website, but we specifically requested for declaration of results forms for these districts, as well as tally sheets. And so the regulations to the Access to Information Act provide for a certain procedure for requesting information. And you're supposed to include details of the information you want, as well as the format in which you want to receive it. So we asked for photocopies of these declaration of results forms and the tally sheets. And we're asking for them as Ugandans, which means we want to also share this information with other Ugandans once we receive it.
Jotham, is that too much to ask? Okay. We've lost connection with Jotham. Hopefully we'll try and get it thereafter. But look, at the end of the day, when the EC says every candidate had its agents, and so these agents, of course there were suspicions, you know, that some agents were bribed along the way, and maybe they could have tinkered with the results and that kind of thing.
Some were chased away.
Some were chased away. In that case, the EC says it's too much work, it's too laborious, it is not even too necessary, say, to have it on the website. So the summary therein, it can be tailored for those that, you know, were at these different places.
But here's the thing, right? This is a right that is provided for under the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda. We are entitled to this information. Like I said, there are exceptions. They can tell us that this information would prejudice the security of the state. You know, that could be a reason that they give for not giving us that information. But they have to get back to us and give us those reasons, right? And the law is very clear about whether they can reject us on such grounds or not. So, and a few of us managed to speak to Mr. Taremo yesterday when we went to the Electoral Commission, and he assured us that we would receive a response by yesterday afternoon. And so he got back to us and said the person we addressed the request to would get back to us, and he's right. Because what the Access to Information Act says is that you address your request to the chief executive of whichever government agency you're asking for this information from. And we addressed it to Mr. Badri Chigundu. So we are waiting. The law provides that they have a maximum of 21 days within which to get back to us. So we are waiting to hear from them.
Can I just add, Joel? The reason why this is important, I advised some people during election week, and I told them that, you see, and this is the point that perhaps many people are missing, especially at the Electoral Commission and within the NRM. The building of a country is everyone's responsibility. And it is a process, a long, long, painful process. Countries that have been at this for centuries have not yet gotten to certain places that we think they should be at. In the 2006 presidential election petition in this country, the question of declaration of results forms came up. It was one of those questions that people don't pay attention to, but this is where people are coming from. The question comes up and lawyers say, let the EC produce the forms, and the team for their side says, that's not humanly possible. That was 2006. After that presidential petition, Dr. Besigye, who was the first runner-up, decides I will never go back, in the way that he put it, to that court. You see, now when he refuses to go back to that court, there's a serious problem, because now you have a standoff between him and government. Even if he wanted to go to court, he is saying, I am handicapped, and his lawyers are saying we can't act for him in such a handicap. That's a serious issue, because there's a stalemate there that you can't fix by speeches.
What happens in that case? Because you see, the 10 days run out today,
As a matter of fact,
some will say that, you know, he does not have to be there. His lawyers can get to do the job.
No, but you see, here is the thing. We as lawyers act under instruction of the client. And by the way, let me state very clearly, I am not a member of the FDC. I am not a member of the opposition in this country. I don't support any political party. Here I speak purely as a lawyer, and I speak only for myself. As a lawyer, I act on the instructions of my client. Mr. David Mpanga and his team have said, we will not act for the client under those handicaps. I have reached out to some of them and said, what's the issue here? And they sat me down and explained to me the handicaps. That gentleman we call Dr. Besigye has no access to the phone. His home has been blanketed for some reason. He can't speak on the phone. His lawyers have been repeatedly denied access. They filed an application in the courts at Kasangati to lift the deployment at the police. The matter was fixed for March the 17th, which is way after the deadline. Now, people have argued, and I have heard this argument from a number of circles, well, why not just extend the time? Because that time is provided in the Constitution. Let me explain why that is important. There is only one time frame for a suit in the Constitution, and that is for the presidential election. The presidential election, challenging it, is arguably the biggest case of a lawyer's career, but it is also a case that can throw this country in 20 different directions overnight. And therefore, the framers of our Constitution were deliberate in protecting the institution of the presidency, in saying, don't tinker with it or expose it to such a threat without putting safeguards in place. One of those safeguards is the time limit. You can extend time and in different cases because the statutes...
Would it require a court ruling or that kind of thing?
No. For you to extend that time, you have to amend the Constitution, because the extension of time that we usually apply for in the courts is provided for by statute. So the statute says you have 14 days to respond if I sue you. You don't respond in those days. The same statute says you can extend the time.
All right,
and this is how you go.
I understand Jotham is back with us. We should link to him in a bit. But Godiva, what happens in the event that today runs out? This petition has not been filed. Besigye and his lawyers say we have not been able to do this because this man is quote unquote under arrest, house arrest that is. What happens? What next?
Well, this is me speaking as a Ugandan citizen, first of all.
I like the way you lawyers first.
It would be... Of course, I would be very disappointed, but I completely understand how Besigye could fail to file a petition within this time. The 10 days run out today. What time does court close? At 5 p.m.,
5 p.m.
right? No more working hours. So if Besigye is unable to file that petition, we as Ugandans are stuck in a situation where we are complaining about irregularities in an election, and we have no recourse because the 10 days have run out.
All right, but there's another option. Another camp may file the petition, and I suspect that another camp will file before the day closes.
All right.
So really? What is the basis of your suspicion?
That suspicion all over the place. But Jotham is back with us.
I can't say.
Jotham, I don't know how much you did hear of what Godiva did say. She's one of the ladies that came to your offices yesterday to file that petition, and they have got a request, saying, look, this information should be available to us as Ugandans. And I was asking before you went off that, is that too much to ask?
Well, they came and asked for the information, but to the best of my knowledge, it wasn't an ultimatum that provide this information immediately. Yes, we met. They met in my office, and they told me they had wrote to chairman. They wrote chairman requesting for that information, and I told them I would follow up with the chairman on their request. Chairman, the whole of yesterday was very busy in a meeting chairing a petition session, so I wasn't able to touch base with him, and I talked with Irene of Vonji, who led the team, and I told her I wasn't able to get the chairman because he was busy the whole of today. So,
it
would be too early to complain now that they haven't gotten that information.
That's true.
I am not a lawyer, neither do I work for the Electoral Commission. I am a Ugandan. I'm trying to get my head around this. You lawyers will say that access to information, this should be availed. The EC is saying, look, the agents and their candidates have these declaration forms. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. I don't want any of this petition. I don't want any of that. But as a Ugandan, I want to know, and I'm sure I speak for millions of Ugandans out there that are watching, and this whole hula-baloo about the law and stuff and petition, wait for us to get back to you. I'm thinking, I am a Ugandan, I have access to the internet, I should be able to access this information. Why can't I access it, Jotham?
Joel, you have a right to eat food. You are not going to find somebody in a hotel who has paid for his food and you start eating that food.
And that's the point. That's your food. This is my food. I pay taxes in this country and I voted, so this is my food.
Yes. No. Joel,
So just am I telling us that, you see, these results, it's only candidates and their agents that are entitled to them. We Ugandans are not entitled to these results. Is that what you're saying?
Joel, listen. Joel, listen.
I'm listening.
Joel, listen. Okay? Okay. We were on the issue of the declaration of results forms, okay? And I told you, those who got declaration of results forms were agents. Why did we give them to only agents? There were also supporters of candidates that would have gotten those forms, okay? So if you want information on the electoral process, we will provide it.
Okay, so that seems like a hint. You will provide it when, and what are you going to provide exactly?
Were exclusively for the official agents of the candidates.
Okay.
We are not asking for the forms themselves. We are just asking you to publish what the results that were on those forms. Is that illegal a thing to do for you? Because we want to track and see each polling station.
What do I do for you?
No, you see what you published was a summary.
Huh?
What you published was a summary. It does not correlate to the polling station.
www.ec.or.ug.
And we know that website. We have been to it, but you see what is there is simply a summary. It does not do the breakdown, which breakdown, by the way, can exonerate you before the Electoral Commission. Take away the perception that you helped the rigging.
Don't mislead our viewers, Joel. Don't mislead our viewers.
No, I'm simply asking a question.
There is no summary on that website. There are scores from every polling station in this country.
All right, probably I saw wrong. Let me just ask my colleagues here, because I know they have access to that.
But you haven't read it.
Okay, well, what do you see on that website? We probably see different things. What's on the website?
The last time I tried to get onto the Electoral Commission website was yesterday afternoon.
Joel, you have an iPad. Why don't you open for them to see? Open for them.
Jotham, are you telling us that if we went to that website like now, probably you've just uploaded that now, that we are going to find an indication of... Come again? Okay, I thought
you are going to find scores of candidates from the polling stations themselves in this country.
Okay, does that suffice?
I have a question for Mr. Tarema. How do we then clarify these results? Because the issue right now is that even when these results were published, right, we've seen, I think it's about 138 polling stations that had 100% voter turnout, and 100% of these voters voted for one candidate.
For some reason, none feel sick or that kind of thing.
Exactly.
I'm coming back to you. Let's just hear from Robert.
You see, Joel, the point that I made earlier was, for me, the information on the EC, whatever the information on the website is, this is fine. As a researcher, I like to go down to detail.
You want to authenticate.
So what I do is that I look at the actual declaration results form and say, this form is legitimate because all the agents signed it. That's how you get around the question of doctoring. You see, and purely as a researcher, by the way, to say, but those who are blasting the EC are doing it for nothing. The EC put up the correct results. If you didn't send an agent to the polling station, that's your business. You see, that is how I deal with the issue of, I have this one polling station where 100% turned up, they voted one candidate. I simply say, me, I have seen the declaration of results form. You, it is your fault you didn't send an agent there, or your agent voted for the other candidate. And by the way, it happens. I know of a race for MP where a candidate that I know and support very much had his biggest support and his biggest ally betray him and basically give his votes to the other camp. So these things happen. Elections are strange like that. But the point for me is that a person interested in the information that I think that the lady is asking for is not looking at what is on the EC website. He's saying, what is the information behind those numbers?
All right, so
and that's the raw data that I think the EC has an issue with.
Jotham, you see where the pettifogging really is coming from, because when you put that summary, like we are calling it, this is what comes from here, you know, we ultimately want to be able to authenticate it, because you see, and look, we are not saying this is what you did, but it's possible for me to sit here or in your office and then come up with figures and put them therein. But you see, what can exonerate you from that perception, which perception many Ugandans out there do have, that you just doctored these things? Give them what's authentic, so that, like Robert is saying, he can be able to see and say, by the way, people are actually treating the EC unfairly. They're hounding them and investing them unfairly. What they do have on their website as a summary, when you juxtapose it against the original, the authentic document, it does tally. And that's what people are asking for.
Joel, the declaration of results form does not have an individual candidate's results. There were 8 candidates in the presidential race.
Yes.
And each form has scores of each candidate. Okay? So if you are an agent of Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, the results form you have has those results of the other candidates. Okay?
And that's the point.
So even if I was, for example, one of the candidates and I never had an agent, I would still be able to use the agent of the other candidate, of my competitor, to get my results, because the declaration of results form has all the results of the participating candidates. Okay?
And you see, we are saying that that's precisely the point of we want to be able to look at all the others. I don't know if you were saying earlier.
No, well, I think that the EC has taken to look at this from the angle specifically of the candidates. And they don't assume that there are other Ugandans out there
because
who want to write papers on this election.
Yes, especially, and you look
as an academic want to write. I think that says because they were given how much billions of shillings. Exactly. I also voted, and so
so I think the EC perhaps has a position on how they will deal with the rest of us as stakeholders who want to say our tax dollars put to good use and things like that. But I think that the smartest way out of this, which is provided for within the Access to Information Framework, is just avail the information. Whether they will do that or not is entirely up to them. And like I said earlier, just before Godiva arrived, let's wait for the 21 days to run out. I think this will give us a very good example of what should happen. In 2011, in 2006, the question came up in the Supreme Court. It was never dealt with because the EC said it is just humanly impossible. And the judges left it at that. So people said, now this time we won't ask the judges to deal with the issue. The 30 women said, let's go and deal with the issue ourselves. So 21 days from now, when the statutory time limit lapses, we will see what happens after that. If they get the forms, then we will say, they were stressing us here for these forms, so what have they done with the forms? So we simply shift our focus to the 30 ladies and say, you people were just making noise for nothing. You see, if the 21 days lapse and they don't get the forms, then they will tell us what they will do next. And I believe that there are legal mechanisms for that scenario as well. So perhaps the best thing to do with these DR forms, now that we actually know that Ugandans have gone to ask for them formally the way the law requires, let's wait and see. When like Mr. Telema said, and I want to agree with him, perhaps it's too early to complain.
But also, just to add to what Robert has said right now, Mr. Taremwa seems to be approaching this question from the position of a number of candidates who stood in the election, and he's talking about political parties, right? But in this election, we had a number of candidates who are running as independent candidates, not attached to any political party. What does that say? It says that there are a number of Ugandans, including those who run for political office, who are not attached to any particular political party. So we are also entitled to that information, regardless of whether we had an agent at the polling station or not. And we are exercising that right, particularly us as the party women who went there yesterday. Some of us are attached to political parties, some are not. But as Ugandans, we are entitled to that information.
All right, we need to wrap this up. Here's what I'm going to do. I'll get a word from each of you, and then finally we'll hear from Jotham, a final word, and we'll wrap this up. And really, as you give me a final word, there seems to be a stalemate. There is an aura of anger. You see what's happening in Bundibujo, and there's rumors, for example, today is first March. We hear there are people that are going to, there's going to be a 1 million march to Jotham's offices or that kind of thing, but I see he's comfortably seated, so meaning he's sure all is well. How do we move on as a country? Because people are angry, people are agitated, because of this election that these good people organized. How do we remedy this going forward? This country needs to be held together.
Quite frankly, I am not sure. And I say that for two reasons. One is that I seem to read from the NRM camp that they've chosen to take the stance of hubris. We have won this thing before, we have won this thing fair and square, do what you want. We will keep Besigye detained, and that's all right. Whether it is preventive or oppressive, I will leave other people to debate those issues. The EC has said, look, we did our best, do what you want. And people are doing what they want. They're asking for information, whether they go to court to challenge the disenfranchisement of 1,000 polling stations or not. I think a lot is going to play out. One thing is for sure. The Uganda in which we woke up on the 18th of February is gone. This is a new country. The way that we survive in this country from this day forward has changed fundamentally. I think the logical thing to do is to listen to all voices and to say what is going on. Because we were talking here earlier about the stalemate that Dr. Besde finds himself in. I think that will be resolved if another candidate, as I expect, files a petition today, and we will know by 5 p.m. I know that a petition will be filed by 5 p.m. Now, once that petition is filed, it will put out one of the pressure valves but leave another. Because some people have been arguing in some circles, no, the solution here is not legal, it is political. Of course, there's a lot of attention on the Supreme Court bench now, there's a lot of attention on the Electoral Commission, the political parties. What will help is for us to remember that there is only, when God created the universe, he made one Uganda. And there's only one country in which we all must coexist somehow. Standoffs are not going to help. Arrogance is not going to help anyone. Sitting and saying, I will do what I want, is definitely, because it can result in one of two things. Either we will enforce the law strictly, or the legal system will break down completely. And once the legal system breaks down, it's game over. So these issues we are seeing now, I file an urgent application for the shutdown of mobile money and social media. It gets fixed for March the 9th or the 11th or thereabout. I file an application to get a candidate released from detention. It gets fixed for March 17th. I think that these things are now going to attract scrutiny at every level like we've never seen before. Now, as a Ugandan, I intend to play my part by living in a calm environment, abiding by the law. But what I implore state agents not to do is not to try and push me beyond the limit. Because everyone has a breaking point.
Yes. There you are. Just as you come in with your final word, let's say we've gotten some results from the EC website. There you are. That's the results tally sheet. The constituency there is Kwania County. That's a breakdown, you know, but okay, so there you are, as it came through a couple of polling stations and all. But again, like these good people keep insisting, you know, they want to see the declaration results. You know, so there you are. Give me your final word, Godiva.
So I just want to pick up from where Robert left off when he says that he's planning on doing his work calmly. It's now the duty of the state to not push him beyond the limit. Because yesterday when we went to...
Is that a threat, by the way?
No.
It's not even a threat.
It's an honest observation.
Yes, but also yesterday when we went to file our requests with the Electoral Commission, after that we walked up to Hotel Africana to address the press, right? And while we were in the middle of addressing the press, a strange gentleman walked up and kicked the camera out of one of the journalists' hands and then started slapping people around. You know, and we took pictures of him and recorded him, and I posted a few pictures of him on my social media, and a number of Ugandans have come out and identified him as a state operative. What does this mean? This is a group of 30 harmless women. Look at me, right? What can I do if somebody came on the street and said,
there's a lot of power in being one sometimes, but anyway.
Here was a man who has been identified allegedly as a state operative attacking a group of 30 women who are peacefully presenting such a request to the Electoral Commission. And this is the problem right now, because my opinion is that Ugandans have chosen peace. Ugandans have moved on.
Have they?
Let me put that in quotes, right? When you look at what is happening right now, people have carried on with their business. Even yesterday when we went to the Electoral Commission to file our requests, we were a number of women who we all knew we had to go to work after that. You know, we said we're going to do this between 8 and 9 a.m. and then after that we have our jobs to go back to. Ugandans, for the most part, are interested in being peaceful. If you look at this whole election season, during the campaigns, they keep saying Kizza Besigye can cause trouble when he moves in town. But they run the security, the Uganda police ran the security during campaign season, and there was no chaos whatsoever until the day when Kizza Besigye was stopped at Ginger Road traffic lights. So for me, what I get from this is that Ugandans are essentially interested in peace. We are. But state agents keep overstepping. They keep doing too much. For example, yesterday we did not need to be attacked. We peacefully went about our business until the gentleman came and attacked us, you know. So I think that at this point in time, people need to exercise some form of restraint.
All right. Let's have Jotham coming in there with his final word. Of course, all this quibbling and pettifogging, be it on social media, on the streets and so on, it's accruing from the election that was organized by yourselves. But give us a final word as we wrap this up, Jotham.
Joel, the Commission did its best to organize a transparent, free and fair election. Ugandans made a decision. Democracy is about the majority. The majority decision was upheld by the Electoral Commission and it was announced. It is upon the Ugandan people to know that the peace and stability of this country squarely lies on how they participate in the democratic process. When I was growing up, there was a saying that obsinje winji bukaita Roma.
Too much peace in Rome. Is that the interpretation?
Some sections of the population want to assume that their rights are above the rights of others, and therefore they can break the law, and therefore police should not talk about them. They have assumed super rights. I think if we are demanding for rights, we should exercise responsibilities, and we should know that we all have rights, and we should all exercise our rights within the legal framework of our Constitution.
All right, there you are. That's Jotham Taremwa, the spokesperson of the Electoral Commission. Many thanks, Jotham, as always, for making time to illuminate on some of these issues. It's important that you keep coming out to clarify and deal with the perceptions. That's very important if we are going to have the Uganda that you're talking about, a peaceful one, etc., etc. So, kudos to you for joining us this morning. Thank you, Jotham.
Thank you, Joel.
All right, and thank you to my panel here, Godiva Akulo and Robert Kiruna, councils there. So it's a good thing that we keep clarifying on these things and also those messages. You say Ugandans are peaceful, we need to make sure we keep drumming that up. So you can understand, check on the website, those results are there. Of course, while we were showing you just a little bit, at some point the EC would put them up, then remove them, then put again, you know, but they are there now. Go take a look at them. There you are. That's the tally sheet. That's another constituency there, Maruzi County. It will show you who got what and so on. But like these good people keep saying, the declaration of results forms, you know, it's what is going to authenticate what you see there, because the perception from some Ugandans out there, which is an unfortunate, perception, they will say that the Electoral Commission people sat in their offices and cooked these figures, put them in those tables, go into Excel and did whatever they did, you know, which is an unfortunate perception. And of course, they keep calling out on the EC to, if they want to remove that perception, avail this declaration of results forms. Put them there like you have put this up, so that those that lost can squarely agree that they lost, and those that won can smile away. That's it for Morning at NTV. Many thanks for joining us. We'll be doing this again tomorrow. My name is Joel Senyonyi. Good morning.